Customer experience, in my view, is everything that happens from even before someone is a customer. It's from when they have a problem. Somebody gets their first sniffle or their first symptom, that's when it begins, up until when they interact with your product, and then they become an advocate for your product and they're telling other people. Have had experiences either current or in the past where they felt like they're in a feature farm, where they're just churning out features, right? And it's really floating without any anchor to a customer experience journey. And it's not necessarily solving a problem. If you want someone to listen to you, you have to speak their language. And so if you understand and speak towards business problems and say, hey, we can juice adoption very quickly with this focus on customer experience. And we've done it before, and here's the...
Hi, my name is Johan van der Veer. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Theydo, the journey management platform for business decision-making. We raised over $50 million and are growing globally. Our enterprise customers include Ford, J&J, the Home Depot, and Pfizer. I mean, wherever you look, understanding customers is key to staying ahead. But in order to do this at scale, aligning so many different teams with the customer journey is incredibly hard, but it is possible. I really wish this podcast existed before we started our company, because so many companies are organizing around journeys and there's so much to learn. So in order to share what I'm learning, what I'm hearing with our community, I meet with industry experts. And in my video podcast, I'm here to explore the world of business strategy, design, and journeys, customer journeys, to really get an understanding of how leaders are changing their way in their business. So let's dive into the show. So my guest today is Steve Cleff, and he's a product design leader with over 15 years of experience building software that genuinely improves people's lives while helping companies work better with their customers and their teams. Okay, so just to give you a sense of where he's been, he's led product and design across global organizations like Comcast, Barclays, Siemens, and in his agency days, he's worked for brands like JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley, Target, and Vanguard, spanning everything from everyday consumer experience to tools used in life-critical decisions. So today he's building a company called Prismatic Vision, a services business, basically to give his clients an edge on experience. And what I like about what we're going to uncover today is that he started off in fine arts, then went into engineering, uncovered user experience, and today is building multi-agent workflows or agentic layers for clients, and basically uncovering the rabbit hole that we are all grappling with and all deep into. So with that long-winded intro, I hope to sketch the balance between what it takes to have a product forward-thinking organization in enterprise, what it means for customer experience, and how product thinks about experience. But we'll get into all of that. Steve, it's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me, Johan. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so maybe we should dig into it. Like I know at a company called Lufthansa, which I'm sure you know, they say like a product is a sequence of experiences. So when you think about the product organization, when they think about a sequence of experiences expressing a part of the product, I think that's fascinating. So I'm really curious, what's your take? Like in an enterprise context, what do you think product gets wrong about customer experience? And what does customer experience get wrong about product?
Yeah, I think my background in user experience helps to give me a perspective on this, because customer experience, in my view, is everything that happens from even before someone is a customer. It's from when they have a problem. Right? So I've done some work in healthcare, and we talked about when somebody gets their first sniffle or their first symptom, that's when it begins, up until when they interact with your product, and then they become an advocate for your product and they're telling other people that this is the right product for you. Right, whether it's a airline like Lufthansa or a wealth investment firm. And so I find that sometimes in products, trying to be respectful, they forget that life has even existed before the product interaction, right? And there's so much that influences someone's expectation, someone's experience, someone's understanding of value of a product before they even get to the product. And then even within the product, I'm sure you'll have product managers listening who have had experiences either current or in the past where they felt like they're in a feature farm, where they're just churning out features, right? And it's really floating without any anchor to a customer experience journey. and it's not necessarily solving a problem, right? So products can better understand the journey because I think it's really the core of the fuel for what the product should be and how it should grow and how it should scale. On the flip side, customer experience needs to understand it's really hard to be a product manager. There's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of work. You kind of fill in all the gaps that are left open. And there's a long-term strategy that needs to be understood. And so often, customer experience will say, we've had so many important clients ask for this feature, or we've had a certain amount of volume of people asking for this feature. Why can't we just roll this feature out? And while it may be good in the short term, it may not fit with the long-term health of the product, right? It might not be scalable. It might divert too many resources, whether it's budget or personnel. And so if these two groups can understand how they can help each other, there's a strength that comes from that partnership.
What are some of the ways that they can actually benefit from each other? Because what I often see is that because of this disconnect, right, and it materializes in different ways in different companies, but because of this disconnect, one is more important than the other. Totally depends on the organization. Yeah. Some organizations is like the product org rules everything and CX is just executing the research or helping fact finding or doing like analysis on. And in other organizations, it's an actual customer centric organization, but then product typically is like a feature farm, right, to just make sure that we are delivering. And you can argue like if they get all the assignments from customer experience, that's obviously not true, but how do they actually like work better together? Like what are some of the ways that you've seen work?
I think a lot of it can come from leadership, being very clear about what the company goals are and what the product goals are. And I think where I've seen it be best is when a lot of the formal distinctions of responsibilities break down and it's just a team working towards a shared goal. And then people lean on their expertise. And so customer experience can say, we can get you those answers that can make it easier for you to figure out what your roadmap should be and give you a higher level of confidence, give you, if you're a product manager and you're using the RICE framework of, reach, impact, confidence, and effort, you can have a better understanding of reach and impact and confidence if you're partnering with customer experience. Flip side is for customer experience, understanding the shared goals in terms of the business and the product can help you prioritize where you're going to focus, right? Now you should be open-minded, but if you can skew towards things that you know are going to be a priority that support the business, it's going to be easier for people to want to hear what you have to say because you're solving problems for them.
Are you saying like traditionally RICE is owned by the PMs, but actually what you're saying is like CX should own the RIC and then product should own the E? Is that what you're saying?
I was saying, I don't know about ownership, right? But I think that they would get the intelligence and the data and the quotes to help increase the confidence level for PMs to understand what's impact or to have a higher level of confidence. So from my experience, ownership is going to vary in every little different organization, right? Even if as you were saying, like some organizations are leaning towards product or customers. So the ownership is going to be different, but the way that they demonstrate value to each other is going to open up more of that partnership.
Yeah. Yeah. In smaller product organizations, typically like the PM owns the whole why, right? It's like, why should we do this in the first place? That aligns to the business strategy. And then why do customers even need this? Because like we have done the research and we've done like the digging on what uncovered the needs in line with their job to be done or the customer journey. But in large organizations, it's way more fragmented and way harder to do. To your earlier point, like the customer experience starts with the patient having like an itch and thinking like, oh, something is wrong with me. Let me figure it out. And ultimately going down this whole rabbit hole of getting diagnosed and ultimately maybe like being hospitalized or getting meds. And that end-to-end experience cuts across like 50 teams, where maybe like in an early stage company, it cuts across 2 teams. And maybe both of them are product teams. So the product manager holds like more closely the data, the research, but also the prioritization. And in larger organizations, that starts to fade away. But do we even think of CX should be department? Is that part of, hey, we have teams that are aligned with certain goals or certain outcomes, and therefore it might be an expertise, but we don't need the function for it. Where are you on that?
Yeah, I'm with that, right? I think that it's a way of thinking, it's a way of doing business that sometimes requires specialized skills. And so you would have specialists to do things like research or analysis, but the best organizations share those concerns or ownership for those things like customer satisfaction or growth. I'm not saying get rid of a CX department, but I'm saying if it's everyone's responsibility, then it's going to be a higher priority and it's going to be implemented more frequently.
Right, because product is not everyone's responsibility, it's for the product org, but customer experience is everyone's responsibility. And that's where the gap actually emerges from.
Yep.
Yeah, and then the customer experience team thinks we're end-to-end, so it's our responsibility, but actually like, no, it's everyone's responsibility. Where should we place it? Like, if it's still a function, if it's still a team, like what is the ideal place? Or maybe there is no ideal place, there's no one like size fits all. Like, how do you think about where it should sit in the organization?
Yeah, I think that I've worked in enough places to know that there is no one size fits all. It's good.
Right.
You know, a lot of it, when I talk to people the first time, they ask questions like this: where does research sit, or where does CX sit? And often it depends on the maturity level of the organization and some of the challenges that they have. And I think younger organizations need to have it more discreet. And I think it's helpful if they are given enough seniority of leadership where they can't be ignored or brushed off. And so maybe they report to a chief product officer, or maybe they report to a CEO. But something at that C-level, because there's so much time pressure these days, especially with this explosion of AI startups, AI fueled and AI integrated startups, that the pressure that existed in the early, 2020s was already there before this. Now it's amplified. And so people will cut corners and people will skip steps. And so if you've got some seniority there to help ensure that it's not an option to skip those steps, it serves everybody better, because you can't have business without customers.
What are some of the organizations that have nailed this? Like, what have you seen where you've worked for that actually nailed this? Like, what would be a good example of where this played out in their case?
Yeah.
In a really good way.
So I just said it should come from top down, but where I've really seen it be successful is bottom up. And
Okay.
I've seen it happen on smaller projects that don't have as much visibility or scrutiny, where people are trying to make a real difference. And so they realize that the power of customer experience is what's going to give them the advantage to be able to overcome difficult situations, or to have such success that it gets noticed, and then more scale comes with that. So that's where I've seen it most often happen. And then an organization would take note and say, hey, this particular product was very successful. What was the secret? What did you do differently? And then it comes out, well, we had a very strong understanding of our customers. We mapped the value of our products to the needs that they had, and so on. And so they say, all right, well, we want you to do for this next product what you did over here. Right? I've been asked that specifically. Can you do for this what you just did for that? And then it becomes an organizational philosophy. So you're asking where, and the reason why it's hard for me to answer is because I can think of specific products and projects, but it's hard to say this particular organization really nailed it, often because some of the organizations I worked for are enormous, and there's going to be a lot of differences in the way that they did it. But there were certain products where they were very successful.
What would you say to yeah, sure. Because if I think about like product teams today, product leaders today that want to be more customer centric, let's say in the extreme case, they're still working in a feature factory, but in less extreme cases, they have pockets of deep customer centricity in products
in projects, but it's not across the board. So what should product leaders do today to bring more of an experience forward way of working, of an experience forward approach to running product or to running the business too?
The way that I've done it and seen it done is, first you get a deep understanding of what are the goals and pressures on the organization as a whole. So, for example, if a nice opportunity is a product that launched and just kind of was flat with adoption. If you're able to learn more about your customers and then take that knowledge and find success with increases in adoption. And I would always say, make sure your analytics are there because you're going to want to demonstrate impact. What you're doing is you're tying this customer experience practice to a painful business need that some executive, someone at a higher level has. And they will be grateful, as opposed to giving you permission to do customer experience in the way that you believe in it. They will ask you to do it more because you're focused more on solving their problem. I have met some people who their heart is in the right place, but when they talk about why customer experience is important, they're talking about best practices and best cases or industry thinking within the customer experience world. And if you want someone to listen to you, you have to speak their language. And so if you understand and speak towards business problems and say, hey, we can juice adoption very quickly with this focus on customer experience, and we've done it before, and here's the metrics that we have to show for it, you will get invitations to continue doing that, and you will get resources to scale your team up.
Does that also translate to outside the product world? Because sometimes it's like to your point, like the executive cares about something that has to be also changed by improving the policies that you have, or changing the policies that you have, or bringing marketing in because they have just done a poor job, or they need to do a different job, which is then, it's not part of product, and therefore we will not touch it. And then we're back to square one. Like, how would you tackle that?
Yeah, it comes back to shared goals, right? So, people will often think of marketing as an afterthought when it's so important, right? The three reasons why products fail are: there's no value, the value is too hard to understand, the value is too hard to get. And often people in products can think that they behave as if the customer is predisposed to use their product. And they're not, right? They may not understand the product. And that's where product marketing comes in. And so if you as a product marketer can say, I'm going to help you hit your goals, right? Whether it's adoption or increased engagement or increased use or upsell of higher tiers of subscriptions on your SaaS product, whatever it is, then you'll get the attention of somebody in product, and they should be saying thank you for participating, as opposed to, you know what, there's a lot of people in the meeting already and we'll just send you the notes, right? You want to get invited to that meeting.
So it starts way earlier than just like where the product touches the first interaction with the customer or with the user, but which obviously brings us to the journey. Who owns the journey? Like, where should that sit? Should CX own the journey, which a lot of customer experience teams want to do? Should it be like, we think of product as a sequence of experience, and therefore product owns a sequence set of journeys? Is broader than the business. Who should own the journey?
Well, I'm hopefully you don't mind me digging into like, what does ownership mean, right? So
Sure.
Does ownership mean who creates the journey and who maintains the journey? Or does ownership mean who prioritizes the parts of the journey? Because I think it's obvious when it's the creation and maintenance, it's the CX team, right? That's why you're there. So you understand the customer, you find the right data, you establish a level of trust with that data. You're good at synthesis, and you can uncover insights, and then you can connect that insight to a specific business need. That makes you a good CX person. In product, you productize those insights, right? You understand what on the journey gets translated into the roadmap. And so it can help if products got a louder voice for them to champion the journey. for them to direct people to consult the journey. But I think in terms of the creation and maintenance, that's where you want those specialists who understand those specific skills that are going to make for a good journey that actually will have impact, right? There's lots of journeys out there, but the ones that are going to genuinely uncover the important insights or have impact come from people who know how to do it and have done it before.
And then you have the language barrier, right? I mean, journey in your mind might mean journey in, or like another journey type in someone else's mind, right? We have got the user flow, and we got like the sales pipeline, and we got the journey map, and we got the blueprint, and we got all these different flavors of that. Like, how are you specifically working with your peers in customer experience to make sure like that was not something that you would fall into, like a trap you would fall into?
I think it's knowing what to keep in and what to leave out, and knowing how I'm always gonna take a quick step back. So when I was in UX, no one asked for it, right? And I had to constantly sell people on inviting me to meetings and carving out extra time for UX. And so have perpetually always tried to sell myself. And the way that I do it is to find out problems that people have and then demonstrate how I can solve those problems. And so when I'm presenting a journey, I'm contextualizing it in terms of people looking at that and seeing how it's going to help them, what they're going to do with it. It's never a journey for a journey's sake. And so I will often adapt it for different audiences. What I secretly need for me to believe in the journey is that it captures someplace all the steps in the process and all the friction points and all the parts where someone either struggles or has a workaround or receives value and has a problem solved. But I will often simplify that when I present it to other people. And I will highlight the areas where we've got an adoption friction point if adoption is our problem, or we've got a lack of perceived value exchange when we've got an engagement issue, or where people are not renewing subscriptions or something like that. So, but I've made multiple versions of journeys for different people, right? For engineers, for designers, for business people. And then there's a canon journey that I refer to when I need to have confidence that I know what I'm recommending is going to have an impact or not.
It doesn't seem like a natural thing for many product leaders to use the journey in that sense, right? It's like we talk in roadmaps and prioritization and RICE scores, as you pointed out. Like, that's easier. It's closer to home. It's like what we can control. But when we think about a journey, it's often like including parts that we can't control. Like that's a big disconnect. Was it true that in many organizations at work there was already like this emphasis on the customer journey, on understanding like the broader customer experience that the product teams that you were part of? Or was that more like an accident, or is it more like a learned experience along the way that is the right way forward?
It's a learned experience. It's in my situation in the past, typically I'm the person who brings that to the organization and shows them the benefits of it. And then I work really hard to make it easy for people to integrate, right? So there's the UX background, right? If I'm saying, here's a process and it's incredibly valuable, but it's going to take a long time, or we have to hire up a huge staff to do it, it's just no one's going to adopt it, right? I treat it like a product. And so I try and fit it into the gaps that exist in the organization, and I'm constantly trying to make it go faster. That's where AI recently has come into play to really speed things up. But I have not experienced going to a lot of companies where the journey is already held in high prioritization before I've arrived. It'd be great, but it's often easy to show, because I mean, you know this. It's the core of how you're going to succeed. It's understanding the customer, and so it's an easy conversation to have over and over again because I know how it's going to go. I know people are going to see the value in it if I speak their language and I respect some of their constraints.
Right. So which parts of the work is actually now completely changed because of AI, and what is still the same?
So what's the same is why you're doing it and what's important, and it's the human factors, right? It's the customer parts and understanding them. Everything is potentially changed with AI in terms of the speed at which you work, the breadth that you can get into. Synthesis happens faster. There's also a lot of ways to distribute information faster and in different forms. So one product that I've seen recently, it's a AI analysis tool for customer experience interviews, and they will chop up videos into little, it's like Instagram Reels or TikTok videos so that you can disseminate throughout an organization, which would be, a multi-day process in the past. So you can get smarter faster, you can communicate faster, you can distribute faster. And I'm really excited about it because so many great journey maps just sit on one person's laptop and they don't get used. And so the power is in people taking action from the journey. One of your episodes recently, someone was saying that the journey is just the beginning. And so AI can help you formulate the journey, but I think it helps you take action on the journey as well. And I can give you some specific examples of specific tools, but I'm a systems thinker. So I'm always trying to, and it's the only way I've been able to keep up with AI is to try and understand the systems and the applications broadly, because the tools evolve weekly and there's new ones every day.
If you're enjoying this conversation, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave a review. It makes all the difference. The Experience Edge podcast is where I interview business leaders, CX pioneers, and the best designers who share their insight on creating business impact, having an edge on the customer experience. Do you want more exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access? Check out the Experience Edge podcast on YouTube and LinkedIn so you don't miss a thing. Now let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah, one of the problems is the blank canvas, right? If let's say you're a product leader and you realize like, okay, we need to understand like the broader customer experience or the journey, because otherwise we just can't make sense of what we're actually doing. And then the next step is like, okay, but what is that? What is that journey? And then turns out typically you would have the data already, right? You would have all your like CSAT surveys. You would have access to support logs. You would have access to primary research from your user experience group, from your CX group, whatever. Like there is data available, probably not everything. And I think like that's fascinating to think like now, like generating that initial like understanding of the broader experience is like this. And it used to be like, oh no, I need to go and map it. And then you're staring at this blank canvas and you're like, but what is actually the first step people take outside of my product? And it's really hard to like, you can't think your way through it, right? You need to talk to your people to do it, talk to your users. Turns out the data is already there. So, and I think like that's a fascinating thing on like to the point of like the journey is just the beginning. It's like, let's get an understanding of what's going on in the life of our customer. Like I had a way back, I had a guest, Marzia, and she said, which always stuck with me, it's like, the journey happens whether you design it or not. And that's so true, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's something that I want everyone to remember, right? Is that the world is going to happen regardless of your products, and your customers have their journey and they choose to involve you, or they choose to involve someone else, or they come up with their own homegrown workaround. And that's it, right? It's there, and you can learn from it. You definitely need to be careful, and I should say this to be responsible with AI. You can't just go ask ChatGPT or Claude, tell me about a customer journey, because it's speculation and it's not really based off of anything.
I've seen that happen as well. Like even like very, very smart people say like, what are you doing? And they're like, they're generating journeys of like a general LLM. It's like, huh? Serious? Like why? Or product marketing, like, oh, let's do some positioning and messaging from like Claude or GPT. Like it's mind blowing to me that smart people are still doing it without like connecting it to the real business context and all the data they have available.
I think it's going to be that way for a while. I think it's a strange situation where so many people are so limited in their exposure and their access to AI right now. There's lots of pressure everywhere to use it. But a lot of companies, I hear people say, all we can do is use Copilot because we have a deal with Microsoft.
Yeah.
And you really need to create specialized agents for these types of tasks. And not everybody knows how to do that. Not everybody has the time to do it. And it's just dangerous otherwise. And so we live in a strange time where there's pressure to learn AI. It's hard to learn AI. And there's a lot of backlash about AI because of people who've done things like we've said, where you use a tool and you give it too big of a scope and it doesn't have any specialized data to make these decisions or even specialized instructions to know how to do it. And so now people are getting skeptical of AI before it's even really matured in a way where people are understanding that you need this specialization. It'll shake out where people who kind of plug away at it are going to have an advantage. But it's a strange time now where people are pressured to do this thing they can't do and they don't understand why. And then they've seen bad results at the same time. But it is actually incredibly powerful and very helpful and a huge time saver.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like, oh, AI is going to take away all the jobs. It's more like, no, what are the tasks those jobs are made of? And then which tasks are going to be replaced? So if you think about those, especially curious to hear a point on like the collaboration between customer experience and product in the process of creating more value for customers. Like what are the tasks you believe like are going to go away quickly because AI will take them over like 100%? And which parts do you believe like will stay human-like for a long time?
Yeah, I think a lot of the structure and organization of how to do our jobs is maybe not necessarily going to go away, but it's going to be accelerated. So I wouldn't ever write a PRD from scratch. I would use a specialized PRD agent to, at the very least, step me through the process so I don't forget what to include. But tasks like that, I want to review a draft. I don't want to write anything from scratch. I don't no blank screens anymore, right? You can get these tools if you work on them enough or someone's worked on them enough and there's enough evals and you trust them, you would use them for a draft. And so I think you could even have a draft of a roadmap. Again, no one have a heart attack. It's not going to be shared with anyone, but it definitely helps you go faster, right? To react to something than it does to create something from scratch. And again, you have to do the hard work of making sure that it's a trustworthy tool. So I think a lot of the structure of things like personas and even structuring journeys, chopping them up to distribute, figuring out communications, all the things that make work more productive and better, but don't really take that creative or strategic part of your brain, I think should be delegated to AI, at least a draft of that.
No, I think that's a good point. And it's like, what should people be asking? Like, what questions come to mind to know like where the boundaries should be, and like what should I actually like offload to my agent? What should I do myself? Like, people grapple with this. Just because it can produce an answer doesn't mean like it's a good answer. So how do you think about like what the questions are that you should be asking if something is all right to like build an agentic workflow for, versus like this is something we should actually keep doing ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, there's some thought that goes into the response to that. So one is I think a set of rules, and then another is a process. So the set of rules is it's easy to think about things that that don't require original thought, that are repeatable, that are about organization and structure. Where give me a summary or a synthesis, or I've got a personal agent that knows how I think, and so I can put information that I learn in, and then it'll spit it out in the way that I learn, so that I can learn really fast because it's that way. But it's not teaching me anything. It's not getting the original information. It's just rearranging things in a way that I've trained it to do so that it suits me. And so I think all that's low risk, right? It's just if you're taking some things and shuffling them around to make it more efficient, I think that's very safe. I think when you're thinking about what should be an agentic workflow, that's where a process comes in and understanding. I think it would be really helpful for lots of people to learn how to build, multi-agent workflows, not because they're going to go into business for that. I've spent a lot of time doing that the past year, and I don't necessarily think that I'm going to sell multi-agent workflows, but it's taught me how to think and understand AI. And so you want to reduce the scope, you want to specialize, and you want to understand, like, why am I creating an agent? Is this not so much to displace any one individual, but does this add a service that I couldn't acquire any other way? Or can I delegate portions of the work that I do? Can I get, first drafts of email responses from an email agent? That makes a lot of sense, right? But understanding original thought should not be offloaded or delegated to any AI tool. The way that I look at it is that creativity and strategy are going to be the things that you need human beings to do, right? You need to make leaps in logic. You need to make unconventional connections. You need to have empathy and understanding for your customers. I'll give you just a quick example. When I was at an agency and I was trying to establish usability testing as a standard practice there, there was someone who fought me on it because it slowed down the process. It cost more. And one day they were telling me about their poor wife had a newborn at home. The wife was sick and they were struggling to get some tasks done. And I said, I want you to think about your wife today, this morning, using our product, and how hard that would be for her, and how if we did usability testing, we would eliminate some of the barriers that would make it hard for her to use that product. And they become my best salesperson of usability testing after that, right? Because they understood and they cared about it. And I don't think anything there is going to come from AI, right? I don't think AI is going to be able to recognize what it meant when he told that story and then connect it and humanize things for him. So I think the thinking and the human aspects of understanding your customers and relating to your teammates and building shared goals and inspiring people to do great work all should be human-led. But for example, when you do research and you have to take all these interviews and turn them into Post-it notes, I would love to offload that to AI. Right? That's
sure.
I'd never want to do that again.
Basic need, right?
Right. So I think at least now, based on the capabilities, when you think about time saving and structure and distribution and rearranging of data and information, those are all great AI tasks.
Another thing that comes to mind is the validation layer, almost like to your point, like why crunch those interviews yourself if AI can do it? Of course, there's some learning into it, especially if you haven't conducted those interviews yourself, but you're getting them handed by your team. That said, a couple of interviews is easy, but now you're doing like thousands of support chats and you got like email threads from your customer support. You got like, I don't know, 500 or 500,000 call recordings from your contact center about a particular issue or a topic. Then it becomes more about the validity of the data, right? It's like, okay, what's in there? Too hard for humans to process, but easy for people to validate the output from AI. And then you're putting your name to it. So I think like that's a fascinating area where obviously AI and humans work together. And the validity of data becomes so much more important today just because we know AI can analyze almost anything. It doesn't mean that the output is great. It's like crap in, crap out. And therefore, like the validity, I'm putting like, I, Steve, say this pain point is real. It's like based on the correct data, it's validated even though it crunched a whole part. Like I think like that's another fascinating area that comes to mind.
yeah, then you assign a budget to it, and now there's real risk, right? And so I think there's a few ways to manage that. And one thing I want to say, just to amplify your point, is that the nature of LLMs is to make things up, right? That's what they do, right? They guess at what's the next right answer based off of patterns, not off of data. So it really makes you concerned about the validity. But the answer is there are people who are good at training these agents so that they are valid, so that you can trust them, right? And there's processes where you break things down and you specialize them and you run manual evals, and then you there's an art to evaluation that you can learn, and you can repeat it. And then even in the ways that you construct the agents, if in the instructions itself you provide good examples that you've built in the past, and I mean, there's ways to do it, right? You can get there. I wouldn't, and that's why I think it's really important for people to understand AI and take these classes if they can find the time, because about a year ago, I was a real skeptic, and now I'm a real advocate because I've seen it work, and I've seen how you can make it reliable and dependable if you're either building it the right way or working with the right person who builds it the right way.
Why are you a skeptic?
I was a skeptic because of the nature of AI. Well, there's a few different things. So I, early on, I don't know, far back as 3 years ago, I had people reaching out to me and saying, hey, we want to replace user researchers with AI. And you are an expert in this area. Will you look at our tool and tell us what you think? And having done it for a long time and knowing that a lot of it can be taught, but some of it is just the way certain minds work, and they're able to make these leaps in logic and these connections, and they're able to infer, and they're able to, where I've gotten my best results is where I've been able to read facial expressions or body language or hear a voice and know that someone starts getting emotional, and I know, oh, let's zoom in. This is important. This can mean something. And then I'm able to connect that to a business need with all the, to speak in AI terms, all the context window of having worked at a company for a while. I just didn't see how that could be replaced. And I thought people were trying to use AI at too large of a scale, too indiscriminately. And then I had also seen it fail often. And I knew that, it wasn't built to do, highly scrutinized analysis. It's built to guess at what you want to hear. At least the LLMs are. Right. I know I'm grossly oversimplifying them, but it makes it for an easier conversation. And so that's why I was a skeptic, because I didn't think, and I know how minds work in organizations where they're trying to do more with less and they're trying to save money. And so they're thinking, this is great. We'll offload everything to an AI. We'll replace huge teams. And the cost savings kind of overwhelm them, and they don't really see the quality control concerns that you would have. So those are reasons why I was skeptic. And then I guess I definitely have to say, as a fine artist, I've seen a lot of generative image making destroy careers of fine artists that I know. And so, I really was skeptical against AI, kind of anti-AI. But I've seen how technology has changed the world. And I understand that I need to understand AI. And I think everybody does, because it's going to change the way that everyone does any kind of business.
Was there a particular moment in time you remember, like, okay, I'm now drinking the Kool-Aid, or it just shifted because of how you applied it in your work, or something that has happened? Or was it more like a gradual shift over time from, okay, let's try, to, okay, this is actually working. Oh, let's make it better. Oh, now everything could be great. Like, how did that go?
So there's a lot of moments, but two stand out. One was where I got so scared I realized, I need to understand this before I'm at a disadvantage. And it was, I saw a PM named Ben Eretz do a presentation on a Maven Lightning lesson where he was showing how he had built an agent to help him prepare for a meeting with a marketing CMO. And he asked the agent to be hostile and to evaluate his responses and then give him suggestions to improve his responses. And it was an application that I had not thought of at all. And there's some pros and cons to that approach, but thinking of it in that way, where someone can use AI to train themselves to prepare to be more effective in that way, that's when I got scared because I realized there's people who are going to use AI and there's people who aren't. The people who are using AI are going to have advantages. Where I had the aha moment of, I had seen AI do a lot of things faster, but not necessarily better, was during one of the classes I took. I was building a customer service agent, and the first responses were kind of what you would imagine: overly flowery, too long. I was looking at it from a UX perspective. It was hard to see what the next steps were. It's just like hard to digest. It was too much. And so I was doing evals and I was training the agent, and I said, you need to be more succinct and you need to be more direct and you have to have a clear call to action. And then it was too impersonal and it lost all the brand voice. And so I said, all right, maybe you can have a sentence or two where you can speak this way, but then the rest of it needs to be succinct. And it came back, but there was a point that it had missed. And I, in my feedback to it, said, all right, I need you to be friendly and personable at the right time. And I knew from having done programming in the past, there's no code for that, right? You can't have like a contextual variable that says, do something at the right time. You have to give it very explicit, as they say, deterministic instructions. But the agent, I had a prompting agent that was helping me rewrite it, and it came up with a custom XML tag that knew how to be warm at the right time. And then I tested it and it worked. And that's when I realized we're living in a different world. Because I would have had to have had a smarter friend in the past to ask, like, is this even possible? And I was able to do it. I was empowered enough to do it on my own. But then the fact that it was even possible because of the nature of LLMs and because they can understand context, it was able to do this. So that really kind of put me over the edge.
I think that's a fascinating example. It's almost like weird that, especially in large enterprise, still there are skeptics. And they want everything to be deterministic by software. But when we think about it, they've been in businesses where there's tens of thousands of people collaborating. Most of those people are very inconsistent, highly impacted by their state of the emotional affairs in their minds and bodies at the same time. So, and that was totally fine. And now we have AI as non-deterministic, and all of a sudden we think that's scary and weird, which is like, it fascinates me to see that play out.
Yeah, that's a good contrast there, and a kind of a amusing irony. Everybody's going to have to learn different things. You know, it behaves differently than everything that we've worked with before, as far as programming and humans. It's somewhere in between, and so I think just people need to learn as much as they can with it and try it out.
I do want to bring it home for us to tie it back to like, okay, we're building products, we're thinking about customer experience as this overarching lens that unifies everything from how the customer actually needs us at their specific points in time and how our products or services are actually showing up to them. But when we think about now releasing our agentic workflows, mainly concerned about the internal pieces, by the way, inside a business, but you can just take this as like AI determining like what is actually like the screens you're seeing, what is the composable UI you're interacting with. But how should we think about preventing AI from like amplifying bad customer experience decisions? Because when it works, it's also easy to offload more to it, and then at some point it can derail and make bad calls. And we've seen the examples in customer service where it's granting like ridiculous amount of cash or giving you like wonderful bonuses. But like when we think about decisions we make internally, they're just as risky in some way. So even for those who are drinking the Kool-Aid and are building with it and are very sophisticated with, like, how do we prevent AI from amplifying like bad experience related decisions?
Yeah, I think a lot of that, it depends on if you're building something yourself, right? If you're building something yourself, there's a way to go about it where you have to test things in several stages before you would release it and trust it. And then you also need to keep an eye on it, right? It's kind of like buying a plant, right? You're going to need to tend to it and nurture it. You can't just set it off. I think, so that's how you could prevent things ahead of time. But I also think you need to adopt kind of an experimental, iterative approach everywhere and think about how do we try things in a small scale? How do we develop standards of reliability? So I should say I've learned a lot of what I talked about. I just need to give credit where credit's due. There's a company called AI Build, and Sarah Davison and Tyler Fisk are the founders there, and that's where I've learned a lot about how to think about AI. And part of what good AI engineers will do is they will constantly let the AI know if it did a good job or not and constantly train it. It's not something that you set up once and then you let go of. And I think that's, for the people who are just looking at it as pure cost savings, that's going to be a surprise to them as well, is that it's really not an automation of it. None of it's automated. Things happen quickly and they can operate independently, but you're going to see the results and it's going to fail. It's like any person doing the job, right? People are going to make mistakes. And so you'd have to ask the same questions about the level of training that you would have for an employee or the level of trust that you would have for an employee. So I think those are ways that you prevent it. And the ways that you manage it when inevitably it is going to break is you're constantly testing it and limiting the scale.
What do you think will happen first, hypothetically? We would have product organizations that have AI customer experience managers in their teams, or we would see customer experience organizations have AI product managers in their teams. What will happen first? Like thinking about like the tipping point.
I don't know that you could. So I'm not entirely comfortable with replacing people with AI. I think if I had to put on a futurist hat and imagine what the world's going to be like in a few years, I think you're going to see all these roles disappear. And I think you're going to see people's roles defined by what value they contribute. So if I had to guess at what my LinkedIn title is going to be in a few years, it's going to be, adoption and engagement specialist. And I have a lot of different experience. I mostly was doing UX and product design. I've done some product and engineering, but the way that I'll present myself, and I'd be happy to do it today, but I don't think people are ready for this yet, is here's what I can do for you, specialist, and here's how I can help you, specialist. And so I think you'll find some customer experience people who need to offload some products responsibilities because they're not getting the prioritization that they need, or they're not getting the PRDs or the roadmaps, and those are things that you could do, but you wouldn't replace a product person. And I would hope that the people in both of those roles would spend more time harnessing their strategy and their creativity, and that's why they would become indispensable.
Yeah. That's actually a pretty good point of view, because what you're saying is like, well, agents are starting to do the tasks that typically are part of the job description of a person. Those tasks get away from the person, but like what remains is like the strategic, the judgment, the sense making, which then boils down to like, I'm not a traditional product manager anymore. I'm not a traditional CX manager anymore, which had a lot of like tasks like do this report, write the PRDs, like prepare the sprint. Like none of that would happen anymore because agents are running that. And to your point, like you're becoming an engagement specialist or an adoption specialist or an experienced fact finder specialist, whatever it is. Like that's the thing that you can do as a person, where you have like a whole like army of agents doing like the traditional task orientation work that is today part of the roles.
Yeah, that's what I would hope, right? I would like for these tools to be more empowering and lead to more fulfilling work. And just based on what I've seen with other technological waves coming, that seems to be the trajectory that I see it on.
Yeah.
And also just working with PMs who don't want to stay up till 10 o'clock writing user stories, or, CX people who don't want to, reformat a PowerPoint because it's getting passed up the chain of command until it gets to the C level. It's those people don't want to do those things. And so my hope is that it's a freeing situation as opposed to a replacement situation.
Right. And on that note, if you think of a good place for customer experience, people can learn about how to do AI well. You mentioned like the place where you learned it.
Yeah.
Any other resources where people in a product organization that work on the customer experience can actually like take the next step without like moving away from their LLMs and making sure that they can actually create value for themselves? Like, what would be a good place that you can recommend people to go to?
Well, if somebody's not subscribing to Lenny's newsletter or Lenny's podcast, right? You know, everybody's going to say that, but definitely, there's lots of tools there. There's some organizations like that one where you can pay for a higher tier subscription and get access to a lot of AI tools for a year for free. AI Build is the place that I went to. I'll tell you, I did it kind of the hard way. When I got started, I signed up for 110 Maven Lightning lessons. And, you know, for those who are listening and don't know, Lightning lessons is like a free preview of a class. And you learn certain topics. And so and they're usually a half hour to an hour. And so I would attend as many free ones as I could. And then I zeroed in on some classes that I would take. And then I talked to people in those lessons, people in the chat, always network in the chat if you can, and ask people where they are learning. And that's when I got a human recommendation for this AI build class that helped me. But it's not easy right now to figure out like what's the reliable place or where who's
Exactly.
fast. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, but I have to say, like, I love to learn, and so I don't mind how difficult it is right now. You know, it's part of the hunt to try and learn these skills. And I think it also really differs depending on what people are trying to learn or understand.
Nice. I love it. Hang out in the comments or in the chat on the side of like something that is generally considered a good course, and then ask for human recommendations. Steve, thank you so much for joining me today. This was amazing. I love it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was a really fun conversation. I'm grateful to have been invited.
All right, and that's it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found it valuable today, don't forget to subscribe to the Experience Edge on your favorite podcast channel, leave a review, and share it with your team. I'd be delighted. Today's episode was brought to you by Daydo, an AI journey management solution for enterprise. To have an edge on your business strategy and to know why your customers do what they do, visit daydo.com and explore more resources to accelerate your customer experience game. And remember, the journey to creating customer-centric impact never ends, and there's always a new edge to discover in doing things differently. Next week, new episode. Until then, keep pushing the edge, stay inspired. See you in the next episode.